This video was brought to you by Squarespace. The Devourers. Like, what's going on with them? Do they have a purpose? Do they have a boss that we're going to fight someday? What do we actually know about them beyond that, well, they devour things? Well, we've finally made it into Zereth Mortis. It's the most secret zone we've ever entered, filled with the mysteries of the first ones. It's one that even the likes of the Primus are just not allowed to enter. It's against the rules. So when we're there, it's just us, the Atoma, the Enlightened, and the Mossworn. Everyone's got a reason to be there, right? You know, there's all the natives of the zone, the Mossworn trying to take it over, and us trying to stop them, and a bunch of brokers trying to work out what the hell's going on. But then there's the Devourers. How do they fit in? Well, they act as if they have more right to be there than anyone else. Their ability to consume the energy and the information directly from Zereth Mortis, their ability to warp the Atoma, it throws up some pretty huge questions. Why does the jailer need to slap a load of domination armor over the Atoma to control them, when the Devourers can just seemingly go and create these mutated part Atoma, part Devourer creatures? What's the link between the first ones and the Devourers? Why do these alien Megamind things look really cool and really creepy? The biggest question is, are Blizzard telegraphing something rather massive about our future? Add this in with what Zovaal says when he dies, and that we're just finding out about the first ones now, and I think we can basically work this out. I mean, even look at their names. Stargorger, World Eater, the All-Consuming. And look at the crazy alien forms. Are Blizzard trying to tell us something? Well, let's find out how Squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming, today's sponsor, can help you. Yeah, we're going to do that first because the Pale Beyond's reveal was almost upon me, and in typical me fashion, nothing was done. I needed a site very quickly, so over the weekend, I hopped into Squarespace's super easy-to-use site builder, and I built the Bellular.Games website. It just came into being. Now, this time around, I used some custom CSS, some code injection. That was quite fun, and that's what really is cool. It's super easy to use, but there's also headroom to do all that fancy business if you really want to. They've got, as well, easy-to-add memberships, which can be really just incredible to have out of the box, email lists, e-commerce, and loads of other fantastic features. So, from what I built in 40 minutes using the sofa, or just on the sofa, with their award-winning templates, to something more in-depth like this, they'll be very easy for me to tweak and add to when we have game updates. Squarespace is the best way to have a great-looking web presence quick. And having that is important because first impressions count. So to get yourself sorted out, head to squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming, and you'll get 10% off your first order with that Bellular Gaming code. So big thank you to Squarespace for supporting the channel for so long. They really are awesome. And with that said, let's talk about these Devourers. I'm going to talk about what we see in Zereth Mortis, but I want you to remember the context here. The Devourers come from the in-between, the area between the realms of the Shadowlands, and that's something that was pretty much spooking everybody in the Shadowlands. Well, in the first 2 chapters of the Zereth Mortis campaign, we of course established a base with the Enlightened, and we revealed the Nathrezim infiltrating the various different forces. But then Pelagos noticed another huge problem. These Devourer rifts had begun opening up everywhere. And these Devourers, I mean, they're more ravenous than ever, and it seems that if they're not sorted out, the whole mission in Zereth Mortis could be off. We got down to the Genesis Fields and found Devourers consuming everything in sight. Pelagos heard a yell from the Cradle of Nascence, and inside, we found an oracle on the edge of death. Devourers had begun attacking her chamber, and just on time, they flood into the room. We clear the first waves, but then something huge happens. A controller type manifests and sucks the energy out of 2 Atoma Guardians. Then it mutates. It becomes a twisted vision of a First One's creature. It's really a new characterization for the Devourers. This is a massive evolution from what we had seen previously in the primary realms of the Shadowlands. And we feel this evolution take place as we explore this zone. The first Devourers we find, and those spawning in Province Esper around the Forge of Afterlives, are what we would expect. They're creature-looking dudes, gathering around those huge spheres, devouring the ephemera within. But the deeper we get into Zereth Mortis, the more warped Automa we find. This mutating process culminates in the Sepulchre of the First One's raid, where one of the massive Annelid primes has been warped into this Devourer boss, Skolex. Now, beyond all of the intensity defeating the Jailer, Skolex is consuming so much ephemera, the pure stuff of First One's magic and creation, that he's actually destabilizing the entirety of Zereth Mortis. Yeah, I know, I headed into the raid just like you and thought, oh cool, it's a worm boss, I'll kill him. The lore behind him is really quite a bit more existential. It would be lovely to work out to what end all of this is going on. Well, without the ability to talk to these Devourers, we basically need to look at this new characterization, this new portrayal of them, things like their ability to consume and mutate from First One's energy. We need to take that as a clue itself. I think it tells us that whatever the Devourers are, they're a fundamental thing to the cosmos. Perhaps even as fundamental as the First Ones themselves, or at the very least, they hail from the most primal age of creation. They are old, and everything we have seen reinforces that. When we got to the Shadowlands, the Devourers seemed like a pest on the edge of every zone, right? Just a bunch of random NPCs that we didn't really know what to think about. They didn't seem to have a massive amount of lore behind them, so we killed them for quests and we moved on. But the deeper we got, the more of a problem they appeared to be. We end up finding out that one of Maldraxx's First One's given functions was to contain the Devourer threat. So they are a known quantity in the grand scheme of things. They were evidently known by the First Ones whenever they set up Maldraxxus. They've then invaded in even greater numbers since the Anima Drought, and that makes me think, what were they feeding on before? Is there something where all of that soul energy, that anima in the Shadowlands, somehow keeps them in check? So when the functions of the Shadowlands get subverted by Zovaal and Denathrius, whatever's holding back the tide just stops and more Devourers appear? Denizens of the Shadowlands, saw these Devourers as basically signs of the end times. The question is why? Are they a sign that we should be paying attention to? I mean, you look at the Ouroboros and all of the sort of Ragnarok-ish imagery that's going on in Ouroboros, and you begin to think, could there be something here? We discovered the Devourers were from the In-Between. Now, the In-Between is the infinite expanse of death magic between the realms of the Shadowlands. And our current understanding is basically that all of these realms we see in the Shadowlands, they were never supposed to be. They were never they were just never there as a part of creation. The First Ones built them. They built Zereth Mortis. They built the Forge of Afterlives, and the Forge of Afterlives builds all the things that we see. But evidently there is so much more between those. In the In-Between, which I think is the most primal fundamental part of the Shadowlands. It's the raw stuff of the cosmos, which I think is a huge clue that these Devourers come from there. So evidently these Devourers are not void. They are something more fundamental. It's what the Shadowlands was before all the realms were built, before its function was codified in the purpose. This mystery got deeper in Korthia when we found new Devourers. The Controller. We found that. It directed the mindless mass of Devourers through Korthia as if it was searching for something. That was then confirmed when we found Controllers sucking information straight out of the ruins and the relics of Korthia. It almost seemed like they were searching for the same thing, for the Sepulchre of the First Ones, and now we've appeared in and around the Sepulchre, and so too have they. Now, putting that kind of intelligent direction behind these Devourers, that was a big step up for their portrayal in this game, and it's one that asks the big question. Do they have a boss? What's going on? Is there something controlling the Controllers? We can't pin this one down entirely, but we've got a few theories. Figuring out what the Devourers are is actually pretty easy. They're Devourers. They do what they do. So the Devourers could just be a primordial animus. They just manifest and devour everything around them. Maybe that's all they're supposed to be, just some world quest fodder for the gamers. But that doesn't satisfy the mystery. That does not fit how I think they're being portrayed. To me, they almost seem like Tyranids from Warhammer, or Zerg from StarCraft, a sort of beast caste, a controller. But does this mean there's a hive mind out there? Is there a hive mind? A grave mind, if you like the Halo lore? What's going on? Is there some single intelligence bent on consuming the entire cosmos? Well, if we figure out who that is, then the Devourers could fold very neatly into a mystery that Blizzard have been building since the beginning of Legion. Now, we've released a few videos on this, and unfortunately the video, honestly, it completely bombed on the channel, so I highly recommend checking out our Doomsayer video that was released maybe a week or two before you have seen this one. To quickly recap, there is enough evidence to suggest that Blizzard are building a big bad in the background. Basically, a new Sargeras or Void Lord level threat that's probably going to be built up over several expansions. And the origin point of this is that in Legion, the Doomsayers, they talked about a bunch of things. One is a crooked serpent, and that it would basically make the Void howl for the light it once despised, which makes me think that it's evidently a threat beyond those cosmic forces. It seemed to me like it was kind of, after dealing with our more near-term threats, it seemed like super apocalyptic stuff. And I think the worst of that is still in our future. That crooked serpent, whatever it is, I think is coming. Then, of course, in Eyes of the Earth Mother, which is a fairy tale, we discovered that if you peel back all the allegorical mythology, and to be very clear there, I know as an example, Noble took issue with this. No, I think that this is Tauren mythology. This is the most ancient stories told by these ancient Tauren through the lens of their own understanding, their own conception. I mean, I really don't think that Azeroth was just gallivanting around Azeroth as a lady, just making mountains and shit. No. I think, as with all myth, I mean, you don't take the Book of Genesis. I mean, well, some do actually, but this is why theology is actually quite interesting, The Book of Genesis. For some people, that's a very, very literal tale of creation. For other people, it's an allegorical tale of creation that means other things. And I think if we're going to treat the mythos of Warcraft with the respect that it deserves, then sometimes we need to put our theologian hat on. So I think when you do that, there's a hell of a lot. Now, for me, that truth is basically that Azeroth, I think, created our planet, maybe even the cosmos, to protect herself from a group known as the Old Ones. And that really doesn't work if you have the conception that Azeroth is just another Titan. But all of the lore that we've seen, like the last 2 years, tells us that Azeroth is not just another Titan. One theory pegged these Old Ones as just old gods, and the Eyes of the Earth Mother tale being Azeroth's primordial struggle against the old gods. Another is that this tale actually happened before that. I do think the text supports that reading as well, and that these Old Ones are something significantly more fundamental. The idea of them being a primal threat to creation is captivating given how, right now, we are right in the workshop of the gods. The same gods who probably created Zerath Umbra for the Void. If they had a threat in their time, surely it would be the Devourers, given that they come from the in-between, i.e., the bit of the Shadowlands that they didn't build. All this stuff was locked into place when we got into Zereth Mortis. We found part 2 of Farim's mad ramblings, and in that he talks about a 7th force, one in opposition to the creation of the first ones. Now remember, in Korthia, the ever-living statue told us that the 7th covets what the 6 hold fast. So what's the deal with this opposition? Well, in Zereth Mortis, the oracles tell us that if the 6 voices are in discord and without harmony, then the whole scheme will be undone. Undone by who? Well, evidently not the jailer, because we end up defeating him without getting the other cosmic forces involved. And if you look at Farim's just sort of after the fact interpretation of things. He is terribly worried that while the jailer threat and all that has been solved, that a bit of discord has been put into things. That there's been a crack in the Maker's pattern, and that crack could get bigger over time, and there could be a severe problem. And to me, that maps perfectly onto the idea of Devourers spilling forth from wherever the hell they come from into all of this, ordered land made by gods and shit. Plus, Devourers they're shown as a threat, and they clearly have nothing to do with Zovaal. I think they are the #1 candidate for the foot soldiers of the Seventh Force, the antithesis to everything that it means to be from Azeroth. Maybe even a more fantasy, more sort of, basically a more high fantasy version of the Zerg or something, and that could actually be kind of cool. I'm biased, I like StarCraft. Now, if all of this is true, then we're going to see Devourers long into our future, and I think they can make for a cool villain. Because as much as it's very easy to be cynical and emotionally cold towards the Shadowlands, if you look at the crazy alien-looking Devourers, that's a creepy design. That's a cool design, and I want to see more of it. There are some huge parts of this mystery that didn't really get full consideration in this video. We'll be real. Here's one. Why does G'huun from Uldir have very similar colors and a skin texture to the Devourers? Given that was a Titan experiment sort of facility, and the Mother, who sort of operated that facility, she knew shit that Raden didn't. So what's going on there? Was she working in some secret experiments? There's also the Quantum Devourer in Legion. What's that about? But there's one wild one that I want to leave you with here. We've been told that the Shadowlands is artificial, that it's basically a structure placed over oceans of death magic. And that's the same ocean that these Devourers come from. Now, we've always wondered why Anima goes to the Shadowlands and what's done with it. Literally, what is the point of the Shadowlands? Is it just some sort of cosmic energy source? Is it stored in the Shadowlands? What goes on? Well, without the structures of the first ones, that we call the Shadowlands, would all this anima just be devoured by this ocean of cosmic energy? Would a tide of Devourers basically just spill forth and consume all of creation? If you took the read that Azeroth is fundamental to creation, then when thinking of Eyes of the Earth Mother, her #1 love and priority was life. She needed to protect it from the Old Ones. And that would be true even when that life is experiencing afterlife and has crossed into the Veil. Is the Shadowlands constructed to subvert whatever the Seventh Force is, to hold back the tide of these Devourers? Really, we've got nothing but vague notions in this one, but we can see figures begin to form in the fog of the lore, and I think this stuff could be coming within the next few expansions. The big question, though, is that with the Zovaal arc going down so badly, will Blizzard basically decide that, this first one stuff, maybe it's more risk than it's actually worth, and maybe they'll change direction. It's kind of hard to tell, but look, that is the Devourers as I see them. That's the sort of potential that we see in the Devourers as we look through all of the lore. So I'd love to hear, do you think they could end up being a pretty cool villain? I actually think there is some potential. They would just need to really put a face to them in a way that's, interesting, where we get a real, in-depth, fleshed-out character. But anyway, that's it for me, so go to squarespace.com/BellularGaming and that Bellular Gaming code to get 10% off your first order there. Awesome for supporting the channel and sponsoring our videos for so long. We appreciate them for it. Okay, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.